In early 2003, a confidential financial report landed on a desk in Billund, Denmark. The numbers inside were not just bad, they were catastrophic. The world's most beloved toy company, a brand synonymous with childhood imagination, was technically bankrupt. Lego had accumulated nearly $800 million in debt. Sales had plummeted by 30% in a single year. And for the first time in history, major retailers like Walmart and Target were threatening to drop the brand entirely. The company was hemorrhaging $337,000 in cash every single day. This wasn't a dip in the market. It was an existential freefall. To the outside world, Lego was an icon. Inside the boardroom, executives were quietly preparing liquidation assets, convinced the company would not survive to see 2005. But how does a company with a monopoly on its specific market destroy itself? The answer wasn't competition. It was arrogance. In a desperate bid to remain relevant in the age of PlayStation and Nintendo, Lego had completely abandoned its identity. They were producing clothes, video games, jewelry, and action figures that didn't require building. They had tripled their catalog of unique parts from 6,000 to over 14,000, creating a logistical nightmare that was eating their margins alive. They were selling sets for less than it cost to manufacture and ship them, and, unbelievably, their internal tracking systems were so archaic they didn't even realize they were losing money on their best-selling items. It was a case study in corporate suicide by innovation. The man who would eventually save the company, Jørgen Vig Knudstorp, later described this period as standing on a burning platform. He realized that staying put meant certain death, but jumping into the icy water of restructuring was a terrifying risk. The story of Lego's collapse is a masterclass in how losing focus can kill a legacy business. But the story of its resurrection? That is perhaps the greatest turnaround in corporate history. It required firing thousands of employees, selling off majority stakes in their beloved theme parks, and slashing the product line with a brutal, unsentimental axe. Today, Lego is the most profitable toy company on Earth, surpassing Mattel and Hasbro combined. But to understand how they achieved this $85 billion valuation, we have to go back to the moment the foundation cracked. We need to dissect the $800 million mistake that proved that sometimes thinking outside the box is the worst thing you can do. This is the anatomy of the Lego turnaround. To understand the magnitude of the fall, we must appreciate the height of the pedestal. Lego began in 1932 in the workshop of Ole Kirk Christensen, a carpenter in Billund, Denmark, amidst the Great Depression. The name itself is a contraction of the Danish words leg godt, meaning play well. Initially, they made wooden ducks and yo-yos, but the true revolution happened in 1958 when the company patented the modern brick design. The genius wasn't just a plastic block, it was the clutch power, the ability of the bricks to stick together firmly yet be pulled apart easily. This created a system of play where every brick made in 1958 would perfectly fit a brick made in 2024. This backward compatibility was their moat, their patent, and their religion. For decades, this system printed money. From 1978 to 1993, Lego grew at a steady, relentless pace, doubling in size every 5 years. They expanded into theme parks, creating Legoland in 1968, which became a massive tourist draw. They dominated the European market and made significant inroads in America. The company was private, family-owned, and incredibly secretive. They operated with a paternalistic structure where profit was secondary to quality. Only the best is good enough was their motto. But this insulation from public market pressures, which initially protected them, eventually made them complacent. By the mid-1990s, the world was changing. The internet arrived, video games exploded, and Lego's management made a fatal calculation. They believed the plastic brick was obsolete. The panic set in around 1998, the first year in the company's history that it posted a loss. The board hired a new CEO, Poul Plumen, tasked with modernizing the brand. Top-tier consultants from around the world whispered a dangerous idea into the ears of Lego executives. The brick is dead. They argued that children's attention spans were shortening and that digital play was the only future. To survive, they claimed, Lego had to become a lifestyle brand. They needed to be Disney. This advice triggered a period of manic, uncontrolled expansion. They launched a clothing line for children. They started developing video games in-house. They even considered opening Lego-branded travel agencies. Crucially, they fired many of the veteran designers, the people who understood the system of play, and replaced them with innovators from outside the toy industry. These new designers didn't care about backward compatibility. They saw the brick as a limitation. They began designing new parts for every single specific set. If a pirate ship needed a specific hull, they molded a giant single-piece hull instead of building it from bricks. This betrayal of the core product philosophy had a catastrophic side effect. Complexity cost. The number of unique elements in their inventory skyrocketed from 6,000 to over 14,200. Supply chain management relies on predictability. When you have 14,000 unique parts sourced from different suppliers globally, predictability vanishes. Lego's factories were paralyzed. They were manufacturing storage bins for parts that were rarely used. The molds for these specialized pieces cost tens of thousands of dollars each to produce, but were only used for 1 or 2 sets. The company had lost the ability to measure the true cost of its products. They were essentially flying a 747 with no instrument panel in the middle of a storm. And the storm was about to break. Let's drill down into the numbers of the 2003 collapse, because they are staggering. The poster child for this failure was a product line called Galidor. It was an action figure series based on a children's TV show designed to compete with Power Rangers. The figures didn't use standard Lego studs. They used electronic parts and awkward joints. The outcome? A total disaster. Lego projected huge sales, but the market rejected it. Worse, the electronic components were sourced at a premium. Analytics revealed later that for some Galidor sets, the cost of the raw materials and packaging actually exceeded the wholesale price Lego charged retailers. They were paying the market to take the product. Another catastrophic failure was the Jack Stone line. These were simplified figures for younger boys, but the sets were composed of huge, prefabricated chunks of plastic. A fire station that used to require 500 bricks to build now consisted of 4 giant walls and a roof. This destroyed the play experience, the joy of building, but financially, it was even worse. These large molds were incredibly expensive to produce and impossible to ship efficiently. You were essentially shipping air inside large, hollow plastic shells. Logistics costs ballooned. By 2003, Lego's return on sales, ROS, had plummeted to negative numbers. For every dollar they made in revenue, they were losing about 20 cents. The internal culture was also broken. A study by the new management team revealed that 94% of the company's innovation efforts were unprofitable. Let that sink in. 94%. The company had diversified into video games, jewelry, clothes, and television. Yet they had no expertise in any of these fields. They opened brand stores in prestigious locations like New York and London that were bleeding cash due to exorbitant rents and low turnover. They were trying to be a lifestyle brand before they had secured their core business. It was a classic case of strategic drift, moving away from what you are good at to chase what you think is cool. Perhaps the most shocking revelation was that Lego didn't know which of its products were profitable. Their costing system allocated overhead costs based on the number of boxes produced, not the complexity of the contents. A set with 500 simple bricks was treated the same as a set with 500 complex, expensive-to-manufacture microchips. This meant the company was unknowingly subsidizing its most complex, money-losing sets with the profits from its simple classic sets. They were effectively penalizing their winners to support their losers. When Jørgen Vig Knudstorp took over, one of his first moves was to uncover this data. He found that the top 30 retailers accounted for nearly 80% of sales, yet Lego was servicing thousands of tiny, independent toy shops with the same logistical priority, eroding their margins further. By late 2003, the debt had reached nearly $800 million. The family-owned company, led by Kjeld Kirk Christensen, the grandson of the founder, had to inject $100 million of their own private fortune just to keep the lights on for another quarter. It was a humiliation. Investment banking firms like Blackstone were circling, waiting for the inevitable bankruptcy filing to pick over the carcass. They wanted the brand name, not the manufacturing. If Lego had gone under, the manufacturing likely would have been outsourced to the lowest bidder in China. The quality would have collapsed, and the system of play would have been broken forever. The legacy of Ole Kirk Christensen was weeks away from being sold for scrap. The final nail in the coffin was the inventory crisis. Because of the production delays caused by the 14,000 different parts, Lego couldn't get sets to stores in time for Christmas. In the toy industry, if you miss Christmas, you miss the year. Major U.S. retailers like Target were left with empty shelves where Legos should have been, while competitors like Mega Bloks moved in. The retailers were furious. They demanded markdowns and threatened to delist Lego entirely. This was the rock bottom, and it was here, in this chaos, that the board made the pivotal decision to step aside and let a 35-year-old former McKinsey consultant take the wheel. Enter Jørgen Vig Knudstorp. He wasn't a toy maker. He was a process guy. A father of 4, he wore glasses, spoke softly, and looked more like a university professor than a corporate raider. But his approach was radical in its simplicity. He told the board, "We are not in the business of selling lifestyle. We are in the business of selling bricks." His first move was psychological. He gathered the staff and didn't offer false hope. He showed them the burning platform data. He famously said, "We are running out of cash. We will not survive unless we change everything." This honesty galvanized the workforce. The denial was over. Knudstorp's strategy was cutting the fat to save the muscle. He immediately slashed the inventory of unique parts. The 14,200 elements were audited. If a part wasn't essential, it was gone. They cut the part count down to 6,500, a reduction of over 50%. Designers were no longer allowed to create new shapes whenever they wanted. They had to innovate inside the box. This forced creativity. Instead of a custom hull for a boat, designers had to build the hull out of standard bricks. This not only saved millions in manufacturing molds, but also returned the build experience to the customer. The sets became better because they were actually Legos again. Next, the fire sale. Knudstorp realized that running theme parks was a distraction. Lego was good at making plastic bricks, not selling popcorn and managing roller coasters. In a controversial move, he sold a 70% stake in the Legoland parks to the Blackstone Group, Merlin Entertainments, for roughly $460 million. This cash injection cleared the debt almost overnight. It was a painful amputation. The parks were the family's pride, but it saved the patient. He also offshored some simple production, but crucially kept the high-precision molding in Denmark and Hungary to maintain quality control. He brought the supply chain discipline of the auto industry to the toy industry. Then came the community engagement. For years, LEGO had ignored its adult fans of LEGO, AFOLs, viewing them as weird eccentrics. Knudstorp saw them as an untapped gold mine of free R&D. He opened the doors. He invited adult fans to help design sets. This led to the creation of the LEGO Architecture line and the Creator Expert series, high-margin sets costing $200 to $300, targeted directly at adults with disposable income. They realized that LEGO wasn't just a toy. It was a medium. By engaging the community, they turned their most passionate customers into their product designers and brand evangelists. Finally, they fixed the retailer relationships. LEGO implemented a pull system instead of a push system. Instead of manufacturing millions of sets and hoping retailers bought them, they analyzed real-time sales data to produce exactly what was selling. They improved their in-stock percentage at Walmart from a dismal 65% to over 90%. They became the most reliable partner in the toy aisle. Retailers who had threatened to drop them began giving them prime shelf space again. The bleeding had stopped. The stabilization phase was complete. Now, it was time to grow. With the foundation solid, LEGO unleashed a strategy of calculated risks. The first was licensing. While Star Wars and Harry Potter had been successful, they were volatile. Sales spiked when movies came out and crashed in between. LEGO needed their own intellectual property. They launched Ninjago. Unlike Galidor, Ninjago was rooted in the brick system but supported by a TV show that drove the narrative. It became an instant evergreen hit. Then came LEGO Friends, a controversial but data-driven line aimed at girls. Despite backlash for being stereotypical, it doubled the company's addressable market overnight. But the true quantum leap was the LEGO Movie in 2014. Most brand movies are terrible 90-minute commercials. LEGO took a different path. They handed creative control to filmmakers Lord and Miller, allowing them to poke fun at the brand. The movie was a critical and commercial smash, grossing $468 million. But more importantly, it was a global advertisement that people paid to watch. It reignited the love for the brand in parents and introduced it to a new generation. Sales surged. In 2015, propelled by the movie, LEGO reported a revenue of $5.2 billion, officially becoming the largest toy company in the world. The financial turnaround was absolute. By 2016, LEGO's profit margins were hovering around 25 to 30%, figures unheard of in the manufacturing sector, rivaling luxury brands like Hermes or tech giants like Apple. They had achieved this not by being the cheapest, but by being the best. They proved that in a digital world, there was still a massive, primal hunger for physical, tactile play. They invested heavily in digitalization, not to replace the brick, but to enhance it. Apps like LEGO Boost taught coding through physical building. They bridged the gap perfectly. The company also localized production. They expanded factories in Mexico to serve the US and in China to serve Asia, reducing shipping times and carbon footprint. They became a truly global operation. The burning platform was gone. In its place was a fortress. The $800 million debt was a distant memory, replaced by billions in cash reserves. The family bought back full control, securing the company's future for the next generation. It was a victory of discipline over ego and product over marketing. What is the lesson of the Lego near-death experience? It's the paradox of innovation. We are often told that to survive, businesses must constantly reinvent themselves, disrupt their own models, and chase the next big thing. Lego proved that sometimes the most radical innovation is to rediscover what you already are. They failed when they tried to be Disney. They succeeded when they decided to be the best damn brick maker in the world. They learned that constraints, like a limited number of brick shapes, actually breed creativity. This story is a warning to every entrepreneur and CEO. Do not mistake movement for progress. Lego spent millions moving fast in the wrong direction. Real strategy requires the courage to say no. No to the profitable-looking distraction. No to the ego-driven expansion. And yes to the boring, unsexy work of supply chain optimization and core product focus. Lego saved itself by shrinking. They cut to grow. And in doing so, they built a foundation that could support an empire.